name is Rafael Kevin Ainagal. You can call me Sir Kev. These series of video-based modules will be based on the topics under Practical Research 2 for senior high school. Your comments below for improvement. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Today's lesson will be about the nature of variables. Let's answer the question, what are variables? Well, variables can simplified by including that in our daily activities. And that activity is the art of choosing. So, usually, ano nagasugod sa isip it mga girls kung nag-shop sanda? Of course, they would want to buy a dress. So, let's change this one into a form of an image, like this one. This is a dress. So let's take for example that this dress that they are thinking is the variable. However, what type of dress would that be? Which one? Is it the green or is it the purple? So in this case, there are two choices of that certain data, which is the dress. The colors green and purple are the variables of the dress. As we have noticed, this is what we call variables. Now, sometimes variables are not just between two choices. Sometimes we can add more to it. Like in this case, we have the color blue dress. Now, in real life situation, pwede natin ma-connect the variables into courting your girl, your girlfriend, or well, the girl that you want to be your girlfriend. So, sometimes when we ask, will you be my girlfriend? How many answers can we elicit? Of course, there are only two choices, right? It's either a yes or a no. Oh, that's so sad. However, we all know that some girls don't answer directly. Sometimes, instead of saying no, they would say, di pa ako ready. Strict ang parents ko, or studies first. That is their usual answer kung hindi nanda type do lalaki. Example, daya, hindi nanda gusto, right? But, if they really like the person, of course, wala nang pakasakali. Dire-diretso na kita, they would totally choose yes. That is how life is, right? So another example is about this one. Kung ginpangutan na ikaw, ilang taon ka na? Your answer should be in the form of age. And these ages can be answered by saying like this one. 6 months. Wow, sumabat to 6 months. 14 years old. Debutante. Or 69 years old. These are the variables of age. So, how do we define variables? Variables are characteristic or property that can take different values or attributes. So like for example, one data, let's say for example there is the word age, that's the data. It can take several properties or attributes such as 69, 24, 36. So those are the values associated with age, and we call them as variables. There are four basic types of variables. The first one, we have antecedent, followed by independent, intervening, and dependent variables. Now, let's take a look at antecedent variables. These are variables that may affect the existence of your independent variable. So, These are the values or variables that can or may affect kung haman may aton nga mga independent variables. What about intervening? Okay, it's actually the one that mediates between independent and dependent variables. These are the variables which may affect the occurrence of the dependent variables depending on how they control the independent variables. In this lesson, we will be focusing on independent and dependent variables. Now, let's take for example this study, teachers' stress levels and its effects on teaching performance. Let's identify what's the antecedent, the independent, the intervening, and the dependent variables. All right. So as you can see, the age, gender, civil status, tenure, that is the antecedent variable, which may affect the teacher's stress levels, which can either be high, moderate, or low. This is your independent variable. In between the independent and the next variable, we have these answers. Coping mechanisms such as sleeping, eating, watching movies, and shopping. We have that as intervening variables. And finally, the effect of the independent variable is measured in teaching performance, which is your dependent variables. So let's take a look at the relationship. The age, gender, civil status, and tenure of a teacher may affect the teacher's stress levels. Now, the coping mechanisms of the teacher can affect the stress levels of the teacher as well and their teaching performance. But we have to study here the effect of teacher stress levels to teaching performance directly. And thus, these two variables are usually found in the title. So let's focus on the independent and dependent variables as mentioned. Let's take a look at the differences. Usually the independent variable is the cause while the dependent is the effect. It's also the input while the dependent is the output. Usually interventions are here in the independent while the dependent are the results. From the word itself, independent, it is autonomous. It can stand alone, whereas the dependent could not. The values in the dependent variables are highly dependent on the values of the independent variable. And usually, we manipulate the independent variable to determine its results on the dependent variable. So like for example, for gender, we usually manipulate the gender by dividing them according to male and female and see the results on the dependent variable whether it changes or there is a significant difference. Let's take a look at these examples. So as mentioned, variables are usually found in the title. So take a look at these examples and identify which are the independent and the dependent variables. Alright, now, here are the answers. The relationship between exposure to mass media and smoking habits among female students. The independent variable here is exposure to mass media. This can stand alone. This is the one that will be causing an effect to smoking habits. So exposure to mass media can directly influence smoking habits among female students. Another example, effect of peer counseling and student study habits. So there is already a keyword there, effect. So peer counseling is the cause or the intervention, and the result is student study habits. That's the dependent. Finally, we have knowledge of the dangers of smoking, attitudes towards life, and smoking habits of young professionals. So the independent variable is the knowledge levels and attitudes towards life, while the dependent variable is the smoking habits. Okay, great. Now, sometimes other variables are missing because simply of common sense. It's already there, okay? For example, in this case, awareness of students on social media ethics. Can you identify which one is the independent and which one is the dependent? Okay, so as you can see, the entire title here is the dependent variable. This is what we are going to study. Now, what is or are the independent variables then? Well, the independent variables here are the age, gender, family income, and a lot more. They are simply called as demographic profile. So, common sense, right? Okay. Now, other classifications of variables are as follows. We have extraneous, confounding organismic or exogenous variables. These are the variables that surround around the other variables. Usually, we can find them in qualitative research. Now, what about dichotomous? Well, dichotomous variables usually have two choices. Examples will be for age. For gender, we have male and female. For polycotomous variables, we have multiple choices. Like for civil status, we have single, married, we have cohabitation, we have widow. Okay, now other classifications also include continuous variables. These are the variables taking a large range of values representing a continuum. So the keyword there is continuum. So the range of values ranges from 0 up to infinitum, meaning there are a lot of variables there that we can find. A good example is age and temperature. So age can either be 1, 1.5, 1.4, and all. Temperature can be 36.2, 38.5, and so on. So there's a lot of values there. Now, non-continuous variables or categorical variables are the following. Example, mutually exclusive. The categories are distinct from each other and exhaustive. It includes all possible ways of categorizing the data. Example of mutually exclusive variables are sex and civil status. We already know that there are only two sexes. We have male and female. For civil status, we have at least four. Now, for exhaustive, it includes all possible ways such as coping strategies. We could not enumerate them all in all because every individual has a lot of coping strategies. Now let's have our first quiz. You have to put your answer on the comment section. Please indicate quiz number 1, then your answers for questions number 1, 2, and 3. Congratulations on finishing this video module in Practical Research 2. Once again, this is Sir Kevin saying the key to success is to focus on goals, not obstacles.